One innocent child was hurt, and the Federation thought it was a small incident. They understood the truth only when humanity stopped holding the galaxy together. Commander Volrath Mythos of the Cringe Sovereignty stood at her post on Station Epsilon 7, watching the cargo bay with the kind of bored contempt that came from 20 years of military service. The Stage 1, a massive ring of metal and commerce spinning in the void between three major trade routes, hummed with the usual chaos. Traders, diplomats, and freight haulers from 200 species crowded the docks, and Volrus hated every single one of them equally. Well, almost equally. She reserved a special kind of disdain for humans. Death-worlders, they called them, primitives from a gravity-cursed rock where everything, and I mean everything, was designed to kill you. The air was toxic, with oxygen levels that would burn Kryn lungs. The gravity was 1.4 times Federation standard. Their planet was covered in water that could drown, deserts that could cook you, and ice caps that could freeze you solid. And somehow, these mammals had not only survived, but thrived. It was offensive, really. Volrus readjusted her ceremonial sash, the one with 16 commendation medals pinned across her chest, and resumed her inspection walk. Her superiors had assigned her to oversee security protocols in Dock 12, which meant standing around looking important while dock workers did actual work, the Kryn way of military excellence, naturally. A freight hauler was unloading containers nearby, big metal boxes stamped with human symbols. Volrus sneered. Humans did most of the heavy freight work in the sector, mainly because no other species was stupid enough to haul unstable reactor cores and volatile chemicals through jump points. Let the Death-worlders risk their short, brutish lives. That was the unspoken rule. She was reviewing a manifest on her datapad, not really reading it, when something small and fast collided with her legs. Volrus stumbled, her datapad clattering to the deck, and looked down to see a tiny human child, maybe 3 or 4 years old by their stunted growth standards. The creature had dark curly hair and wore a bright yellow jacket that was far too cheerful. The child looked up with wide brown eyes, clearly startled. "Sorry," the child squeaked in that horrible human language that sounded like someone gargling gravel. Something inside Volrus snapped. Maybe it was the 18-hour shift. Maybe it was the stack of ignored promotion requests gathering dust on some admiral's desk. Maybe it was just the fact that a Death-worlder, a primitive, had dared to touch her, a commander of the Kryn sovereignty. She struck the child across the face with the back of her hand, not hard by Kryn standards, just a dry disciplinary tap, the kind you would give a misbehaving pet. But humans, with their fragile bones and thin skin, were not built like Kryn. The little girl, Maya, her name was Maya, flew backward and hit the deck with a sickening crack. Blood poured from her nose, and she started screaming, that high-pitched wail that human young made when injured. "Watch where you're going, vermin," Volrus spat, picking up her datapad. A human male, tall by their standards, but still shorter than Volrest, came running from the freight hauler. His face, already red from exertion, turned a deeper shade of crimson. Thomas Reeves, according to the ID badge clipped to his work vest, standard cargo hauler. Nothing special. "What did you do?" he roared, dropping to his knees beside the crying child. "Mia, baby, it's okay. Daddy's here." "Your spawn ran into me," Volrus said, brushing imaginary dust from her uniform. "Consider this a lesson in station protocol. Keep your offspring under control, or I will file charges for assault on a Federation officer." Thomas scooped up his daughter, pressing his hand against her bleeding nose, and stared at Volrus with an expression she could not quite read. Humans were terrible at proper emotional displays. Their faces did too many things at once, but there was something in his eyes, something cold and calculating, that did not match the trembling rage in his voice. "You hit my daughter," he said slowly, each word measured. "And I will hit her again if she touches me," Volrus said, brushing imaginary dust from her uniform. "Now remove yourself from my dock before I have you arrested." Station security, two Volran officers who had been watching from a distance, finally decided to intervene. They moved between Thomas and Volrus, their hands on shock batons. But they were looking at the human, not the commander. "Sir, you need to take your child to medical," one of them said, in that placating tone security used with angry civilians. The commander was within her rights to maintain personal space. Thomas looked at the security officers, then back at Volrus, then down at his daughter who was sobbing into his shoulder. He said nothing. He just turned and walked toward the medical bay, his boots echoing on the metal deck, and that strange coldness never left his eyes. Volrus watched him go and laughed. Humans, so emotional, so weak. She returned to her manifest, already forgetting the incident. By the end of her shift, she'd filed a formal complaint against Thomas Reeves for failure to control a dependent in a restricted area. She recommended a fine and a suspension of his dock privileges. Her commanding officer, Captain Rim Moss, approved it without even reading the details. Standard procedure. What Volrus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 17 other humans had witnessed the incident. 4 of them had recorded it on personal devices. Within an hour, the footage was spreading through the human networks that crisscrossed the station like a nervous system. Within 2 hours, it had reached every human ship, station, and colony within 6 jump points. Within 3 hours, something began to happen that the Galactic Federation had never seen before. The humans went quiet. The first sign came 8 hours after the incident. The human freight hauler, Destiny's Fortune, scheduled to depart at 0600 station time, left 4 hours early without filing a flight plan. Station Control tried to contact them, got no response, and watched helplessly as the ship jumped away into hyperspace. Odd, but not unprecedented. Humans were notoriously rebellious about regulations. By noon, 6 more human vessels had departed ahead of schedule. By 1800 hours, every single human ship docked at Station Epsilon 7 was gone. Captain Aaron Moss called an officers' meeting in the command center, a circular room overlooking the docking bays. Volrus attended, still smug about her complaint being approved. She barely listened as Moss droned on about departure anomalies and missing freight schedules. "Should we be concerned about this?" Lieutenant Carr of Vos asked, her head tendrils twitching with anxiety. "About what?" Moss replied, manipulating a holographic display that showed ship traffic. "The humans leaving? Good riddance, I say. Troublesome species, always complaining about safety standards and demanding higher pay. Let them go sulk on their death world." Volrus smiled. Finally, someone with sense. But Carr persisted. "Sir, the humans handle 42% of all freight in Federation space, 60% of hazardous materials, 70% of high-gravity station maintenance, 80% of deep space rescue operations. They are everywhere, doing everything, and we never noticed because we were too busy being grateful they weren't bothering us." "Then we adapt," Moss said coldly. "We are the Galactic Federation, 200 species. We don't need one group of Death World mammals." Volrus laughed. She actually laughed. "You are worried about garbage collection? About freight? Hire more workers." "We tried," the economist said, pulling up statistics. "The Rayleigh refused to transport unstable reactor cores. Too dangerous. The Fakshi and Trade Collective won't enter high radiation zones, against their religious beliefs. The pellets won't work in anything above 1.2 standard gravity, medical exemptions. Humans were the only ones who would do it, Captain, and now they are not." Day 3, the station started to smell. Garbage piled up in collection zones because the automated systems designed by humans and maintained by humans were failing. Nobody else knew how to fix them. 3 medical waste incinerators broke down, and suddenly nobody wanted to volunteer to manually handle biohazardous material.
food shipments stopped arriving. Turns out most of the agricultural haulers were human-operated. Fuel delivery slowed to a trickle. The entertainment district, which relied heavily on human bartenders and cooks, shut down. Turns out nobody else could make food spicy enough to satisfy Vulran palates or mild enough for pellets' digestive systems. Humans had this weird ability to cook for everyone. Day 4, Station Epsilon 7 went on rationing. Day 5, 3 more stations reported complete system failures in waste management, with toxic buildup reaching critical levels. Day 6, a Rayleigh cargo hauler refused to transport a shipment of medical isotopes, citing safety concerns. The shipment was bound for a children's hospital on Pellets Prime. Without it, 12 children would die. Every other shipping company in the sector also refused. The